Questions are powerful. I've even said before that questions can change a life. They've changed mine. And just a few minutes ago, I saw a question that a man posted in a Facebook group. And the question was, how does it feel to date a good man? And have you always dated a good man, or have you never dated one? And I thought about this question for a second, and I responded, I've only dated good dudes, but I also realized good is relative. A convertible is a good car, but not when you start a family and it's your only vehicle. The good dudes I married weren't prepared for fatherhood, marriage, or the changes in life, and they refused to grow. That led one to being fired many times and losing his family due to his development of anger problems. It led the second to losing his life, passing away at 45 because he refused to consistently treat his diabetes. Good isn't good enough unless it's adapting and growing and evolving. It felt wonderful to be loved by these men, and it was heartbreaking when I realized both were their own worst enemy and their stagnation basically unalived our relationship. And so I kind of wanted to develop that idea even more because, sometimes when you look at a relationship at one point in life, you see it one way, but when you look at it later, you see it differently. And when I first looked at my first marriage, I blamed myself for a lot of things, and I blamed him for a lot of things. But now I realize that some things were kind of not really to be blamed in a sense, but they were just results. So for example, once upon a time, I said I was naive because I believed the promises that he made me. I believed the things that he said. And then when he wasn't able to follow through on them, I was shocked. I was dismayed. I was disappointed. I was hurt, felt betrayed, those kind of things. And on the surface, that looks like, okay, he lied. But people don't always lie when they are not able to follow through on their word, or they don't follow through on their word. Looking back, I got married at 24. I had just graduated college, and he was 22, and he had dropped out of college, not having anything to do with me. He had actually dropped out before we met, but we met, fell in love, were literally married within about 6 to 7 months of us meeting. And everything moves so fast, so in one sense, I didn't know him well enough. In another sense, the things that could have been red flags were not red flags to me. For example, the dropping out of college. Now, looking at that at 55, I would say, hey, somebody that drops out of college possibly has a problem doing hard things. They have a problem following through when life gets hard, when he doesn't feel like going to class, when he doesn't feel like doing the research or the work or the reading, or, doesn't feel like making a way financially to figure out how he's going to pay for it or whatever. But at the time, it didn't seem like that big of a deal because at the time, people around me, since I just graduated college, right? There were so many people my age who were dropping out. So it was kind of the norm. And so it was not a red flag to me at all at that time. And even, there are some people now who would say the same thing is going on. So that would not possibly be a red flag. Also, I realized for the first time when I thought about it, I had been around a certain type of man. I was raised by my mother and father. My father was a man of his word. He didn't speak very much, but when he did speak, everything he said, he did. There was nothing that I can remember my father ever saying that he would do that didn't happen. So, and the same thing with my grandfather, same thing with my uncles, same thing with my cousins. I grew up around men whose word was bond. Like you could take their word to the bank. So it had really never occurred to me that a man would tell me something, make me a promise, and it wouldn't happen. Like that was not in my life experience. I don't think I even had a frame of reference for it. I think that's why I was so blindsided when he wasn't following through with what he said, because I came from a family, I came from an experience where men didn't make any excuses ever. If things were hard, they figured it out. They didn't complain, they didn't whine, and they didn't let you do it. I mean, me being a girl, I remember my daddy telling me one time, stop crying, put on your big girl panties and deal with it. I mean, that's the kind of family I was raised in. It wasn't you couldn't make excuses. You couldn't give up. You couldn't not follow through on your word. It's just you just didn't do that. It just didn't exist. It was not acceptable. It was not part of the way that life was done. So, when I was blaming myself for being naive, that really wasn't what I was doing. I mean, yes, there was some naivete there, but I was living my life based on what I had been taught and based on what I had seen for the 24 years that I had existed. And that's the thing about marrying young. That's the thing about getting into relationships young. That's the thing about getting pregnant and having kids young. You only have so much life experience. So there's only so much you can bring to your decision making. Now, you can read books, you can talk to elders, you can go to premarital counseling. There's a lot of other options of ways to get, some advice and some context and some, exposure to other people's life experiences. But if you're just going on yourself, there's going to be a lot of blind spots, most likely. And so looking at this from this perspective right now, I'm realizing that sometimes the people that we marry, it's not that they're bad people. Sometimes the people that we're in relationships with, it's not that they're bad people. It's that they are where they are at that time with what they have to work with. And sometimes what they have to work with isn't enough. Good isn't enough. They have to grow. They have to, develop discipline. They have to develop more of a skill set than they have. And sometimes people aren't willing to do that. Sometimes they want to stay the same. They want to stagnate. They want to, remain unaltered. And that won't work a lot of times in marriages, in parenting, in certain jobs, in certain family relationships and friendships. It just won't work because that situation requires more of you than you have at the moment. And either you grow, you adapt, or you have to be, removed from that situation. So that's just my 2 thoughts on that. And, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that question that started this whole discussion. And please check out my podcast, Zenergy, Zennurgy. And please check out my books on Amazon. I'm Zenashe, Zenase. That's 2 words. I have 5 books on Amazon. I have an undated planner. I have a guided journal. I have 2 poetry prose memoirs, and I have a children's book. So I'd love for you to check that out. You can also listen to the first 16 chapters of my memoir, Plenty of Guppies and Other Dating Misadventures, on my Zenergy podcast. Chapter 1 is episode 67. All right. May you walk in Zenergy. Have a great day. Questions are powerful. I've even said before that questions can change a life. They've changed mine.